Welcome to Nerd Index. Today we're going to be talking about the shows that are airing for anime season summer 2024, what I am looking forward to and planning to watch. And even though the season has already started, usually this type of video would come out prior to the first episode airing for each show. I'm just a little bit behind this time, but that would be the normal operation of things. First, I would like to highlight that it seems like we're going to get a lot of romance shows this season. The offerings are a little varied, but mostly seeming to be centered around high school students. I think that the season still has diverse offerings for not only romance fans, however, but also still a decent amount of isekai and a decent amount of action. We're going to see a lot of variety from the kinds of shows that I want to watch as well, because we tend to look at shows even if we're not 100% sure, or even if they might end up being B tier or C tier kinds of shows, because we want to give everything a chance, and I'm not afraid to drop something if it's just not clicking. First, we're going to talk about, obviously, the shows that are continuing to air that started in spring season. So, of course, we're going to show up for My Hero Season 7. We're also going to be watching Spice and Wolf, which I'm really excited about because I always enjoyed the original adaptation. We're also going to be watching Mission Yozakura Family. I think that from a lot of the clips that I've seen, it seems like it's going to be fun and engaging. As for continuing seasons, we're going to be watching Oshinoko Season 2. I'm not sure how I feel about the theater troupe arc here. Obviously, I've never read the manga, so I don't really know where it's going, but I'm just going to have to hope that bringing in a bunch of new people is actually going to progress the mystery forward a little bit and not just bog it down. We're also going to be watching Tower of God Season 2. It's been so long since the first season aired that I'm definitely going to have to rewatch it to get myself caught up again before watching Season 2. But I think that it'll be interesting to see how things progress moving forward, because we've definitely been waiting for the sequel for a long time. We're also watching Fairy Tail 100 Years Quest. I'm considering this a sequel because it's obviously like the epilogue to the original Fairy Tail series. This is the one show that I'm making the exception this season to watch weekly, because Fairy Tail is that kind of show where it just has a million episodes and I don't want to be waiting years and years to catch up to it finally. I would like to actually be there the whole time. And I will admit that I have watched the first 2 episodes and I kind of felt like I was reminded of how cringy Fairy Tail can be, and I'm really disappointed about the magic that they're bringing in this time with the dragon eaters instead of like anything new. We're just doing another iteration of Dragon Slayers, and I don't know really what I expected necessarily, but I'm still going to see what happens. I'm still intrigued by, obviously the characters themselves, continuing to progress and conquering what they consider to be the hardest quest ever. We're also going to watch Our Last Crusade, or The Rise of a New World Season 2. This is another one where we've all been waiting for a sequel for years, so we're going to have to rewatch Season 1 again. I do remember liking this one quite a lot, so I'm interested to see where they go with it. Next we have Kimi ni Todoke From Me to You Season 3. Yet another one where we've gotten the sequel or continuation many years after the previous season, and it's also been an extremely long time since I read any of the manga, so I'm definitely going to have to rewatch to get caught up for this. And I'm hoping that they can finish the adaptation with this, because I know that we just got the manga in English for the continuation series for this story. I believe it's them all going to college, so I think it would be cool if they could wrap up the high school arc and potentially adapt the college arc. We're also going to watch The Cafe Terrace and Its Goddesses Season 2. Season 1 was good. Obviously, this is a very fan service heavy show, but it was also engaging, and I felt like I liked each girl for their own reasons, and I really liked the music from the band episode with Akane, and I think that the only thing I'm concerned about is from the PV, there seems to be a whole other group of girls coming in this season and might change the dynamic quite a lot, so I have a little bit of reservations about that. Next we have Nier Automata version 1.1a Core 2. Obviously this is just going to be continuing the same adaptation of the video game or the energy as season 1 or part 1, and I'm really excited to see what they decide to do as far as the speculation about which video game endings we might see or where they're actually going to go with it, if they might create a new canon story or not. Next we have Alia Sometimes Hides Her Feelings in Russian. I've heard good things about this, particularly from one of our friends who's already started watching it, and I think that the clips that I've seen online make it seem like the characters have a lot of good conversational and potentially romantic energy together, so that should be interesting. The Suicide Squad isekai is also intriguing to me, obviously not only because it's an isekai, but I do like Suicide Squad as like a general concept. I'm not really a big fan of the movie, but I've always been a Harley Quinn fan, and I would like to see how the story and characters are handled from this more, Japanese anime-centric perspective. Days with My Stepsister is another one that I think is supposed to be a romance, but I'm not 100% sure where it's going to end up. Next, we plan to watch No Longer Allowed in Another World. I think that this one seems like another funny isekai adventure, and I think that this one will have a lot of good energy to it. It seemed as if the characters were going to bounce off of each other really well, so I'm looking forward to seeing the execution for this one. Next we have Pseudo Harem, which when I watched the PV, I originally couldn't completely tell that it was the same main girl doing all of the characters that I was seeing, like all of the tropes. But now that, I read the synopsis and I understand that it is her doing every role or role play in it, it sounds like it's actually going to be something that has a really interesting hook that we haven't necessarily seen before. So that should be fun. Next we have Senpais and Otokonoko, and I think that this one is going to obviously bring a lot of intrigue from the cross-dressing perspective and from the interpersonal relationships and the possible romance. We'll have to find out for sure. Obviously it does say a love triangle in the synopsis, so there's going to be a little bit of drama involved, I'm sure, as well. Next we have Ashri, My Dear Moments. I think that this one has some potential, but this is another one that I'm worried that I might not end up clicking with, and it could be a drop for the season. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but I just felt like Autry didn't click with me in the trailer, so I'm worried that she wouldn't in the show either. How to Become Ordinary is another one that I am sure is going to have a little bit of romance element into it, but it also seems to be focusing mostly on its speculation about life and fitting in and a little bit of, just the classic high school angst. And I think that it will be interesting to see these two main characters carry the show mostly by themselves from what I can tell. Next we have another fantasy adventure style show with Wistoria Wand and Sword. The art style looks really interesting to me here, and I always love shows with magic systems, and so I'm hoping that it gets fleshed out and that they do a good job with the world building to really tie it all together. Why Does Nobody Remember Me in This World is another one that I think has the potential to be really interesting with the differing timelines and possibly, trying to work through convincing everybody that he is who he says he is, or that's at least the impression that I got from it. So I think that this one will be another execution is really important too, if it will carry through the whole show. Next we have Too Many Losing Heroines. This is another one from the romance category that seems like it's going to be a generally classic harem show. I don't know a whole lot about the girls themselves based off of the trailer, so I can't say for sure who would win necessarily in this harem setup, but we will have, I'm sure, a lot of shenanigans in the show to find out. Next is The Magical Girl and the Evil Lieutenant Used to Be Arch Enemies. I'm looking forward to this one not only because it's being produced by Bones, or Studio Bones, but I think that it's also interesting from the perspective that the source material never got finished. And I'm wondering if they're going to be allowed to create an anime original ending for it or not. So that'll be intriguing. Love is Indivisible by Twins, yet another one of the romance shows. I think that this is pretty standard, sisters probably fighting over the same guy, so we'll see how that one goes as well. Then we have The Strongest Magician in the Demon Lord's Army Was a Human. It'll be interesting to see how long he decides to hide his identity, or how long he succeeds at hiding his identity, and how people will react to it. And so we'll see how they use that element to maintain relationships, and we'll also potentially see some really interesting magical fights. Next we have Dahlia in Bloom. I think that this one is the one that I know the least about, but it gives off a lot of vibes for me similar to Snow White with the red hair. So if it can bring that same level of quality, then I am all for it. We have VTuber Legend, How I Went Viral After Forgetting to Turn Off My Stream. It's another one where I'm concerned that it's probably a little too much cute girls doing cute things, and so I might not be super into it. We'll just have to see what they end up doing with the cast and the story hook of VTubers. Then we have My Wife Has No Emotion. I'm not 100% sure how I feel because there's some scenes in the trailer that look really cutesy, and then there's some scenes in the trailer where I'm kind of like not 100% sure if it's going to be a wholesome show or a horny show. So this is another one where obviously we're just gonna have to find out as we go along. But I do think it's an interesting perspective because there's always been people saying like, well, what are we going to do when the robots take over? Then we have A Journey Through Another World, Raising Kids While Adventuring. I am only concerned about this because I usually don't like the shows where they're driven by small children. I'm not sure how I will feel about these two in general. Anime seems to make kids not super obnoxious, but it could still be, because there's two of them, too much toddler energy for me. Then we have Bye Bye Earth. I think this one might be a really good demi-human kind of fantasy world story for, bringing in the drama of classism and discussing being the final human and things like that. So I think that they have a lot of interesting building blocks here to work from. Next is I Parry Everything. I've heard some people saying some good things about this. I do worry that it might end up becoming a little flat over time if he's not able to evolve his power at all, but I'm sure that it's still worth a try. Then we have A Nobody's Way Up to an Exploration Hero. I think this one is another one that I'm mildly concerned about dropping, but I think that will really depend on how they execute the battling and if the main character is actually able to carry the show or not. The energy from the trailer was a little 50-50. Then we have the Osan Nubi adventure, Trained to Death by the Most Powerful Party Became Invincible. This one is another show that's bringing in the older man proving himself, just like with Kafka from Kaiju number 8, and I am interested in the fact that we are bringing in these older characters and kind of not shifting the entire industry or anything like that, but acknowledging that a lot of people have been watching anime for a long time and they still are, and that there are us slightly older than teenager folks who might be interested in something with a main character that is still relatable in that same perspective. But I also think that it looks like it's going to be a really interesting adventure fantasy show. So there you have it. We've gone over the shows that I think have some potential and some shows that I'm mildly concerned about having to drop later, but as usual, I'm going to give my best attempt to every show and see what sticks out the best by the end of the season. So by September, once everything finishes airing and the final episodes are out, you can expect to hear from me again about my final thoughts on all the shows that we watched.